Imagine a man beaming with pride. He just bought his 16-year-old daughter her first car because she made the honor roll. This is a guy who loves his work. He shows up early and he stays late. Think of that person in your office who knows the name of every single one of his coworkers. That's this guy. He loves to contribute. He loves it so much that at Christmas time, he donated 50 coats to his local community church. I'm sure you know somebody with these qualities. Just imagine that person in your mind. Now picture a man who's been incarcerated, who's homeless, who has lived on and off the street his whole life, who has no credit, and who has never held a job for longer than a month. Think of that person. Well, you may or may not have guessed it, but that's actually the same exact guy. His name is Lawrence Johnson, and he is the assistant facilities manager for my company, The Bazaar Incorporated. See, prior to holding his position, Lawrence faced a cycle of no's. He was stuck in a pattern of absolute disappointment because as much as he looked for purpose and wanted to contribute, he couldn't. He was navigating a world full of closed doors, simply because on every single job interview he went to go on, he had to check a little box that said that he had spent time in prison. And that's why, on the day that I met Lawrence, he was sweeping the streets of Chicago, wearing a Kara Clean Slate t-shirt. That's actually why I walked up to him. I knew what Kara was. I knew that Kara was a transitional work program built to help people who have faced homelessness and incarceration build skills to get themselves back into the workforce. And the reason why I knew that was I had had a call with Kara about 2 days earlier, where I learned about the benefits of their program, and I asked them to be part of the Bazaar Incorporated's inclusive recruitment community. See, 6 years earlier, I was also looking for purpose. Coming into my family's 60-year-old company, I wanted to build on what my grandfather and father had started before me. And while they had turned our little business into a market leader in the distribution of overstock consumer goods to local and national retailers alike, I couldn't imagine spending my days fighting for nickels and dimes and only having conversations about maximizing profit margins. I wanted to focus on something that felt bigger than that. I wanted to focus on people. And so I chose inclusion. I chose to focus on people who come from disenfranchised, often overlooked backgrounds. And what started 6 years ago as an internship for 10 kids with autism has since evolved. Over the past 6 years, we have invested time, effort, money, and energy into building what I believe is a world-class inclusive recruitment, training, management, and culture inside of the company that my family has owned for over 6 decades. And while Lawrence's story is amazing, it's truly one of perseverance, of overcoming. In the walls of Bazaar, it's actually not that unique. He's not the only person who works for us who has heard no his whole life. Because 30% of my nearly 200-person team are people who have come through inclusive recruitment backgrounds. Specifically, we focus on people with disabilities, and we focus on people who have faced homelessness and incarceration. Lester, who works in our warehouse, an injured veteran. Jackie, a young woman with autism, works in our stores. We have 7 team members who are deaf, 11 people in our employ who have cognitive functioning disabilities. Now that I'm even thinking about it, our receptionist, Walter, a brilliant guy who happens to be in a wheelchair. And for most of these people, they couldn't imagine a scenario where they would be allowed to participate in the work. For most of the people on our team, it's actually the first job that they've ever held in their entire life. So why focus on inclusion? Why does any of this matter? Well, there's a growing inequity in our country where certain groups get eliminated for jobs before they even walk into the door. According to a Sherm survey, only 3% of hiring managers will even take an interview with somebody who's faced incarceration. An interview. And the US Census Bureau has published statistics that shows that 1 out of every 5 people with a disability will ever find meaningful employment. Think of if 1 out of your 5 best friends ever had a job. So how do we disrupt this pattern? We end it by fixing the recruiting process. We have to stop looking for all of the little reasons why we should eliminate job candidates before they even walk in the door. Whether it's the fact that they haven't gone to a reputable university, or they have a gap in their work history, or even worse, they've been incarcerated, or roll into the interview in a wheelchair. These little things keep us from looking at people's potential. And we focus on this obsession with what seems like a quick fix to hiring, this relentless pursuit of what is efficient, looking for candidates who will have the least amount of work required for them to get into the job and become productive. But this pursuit of efficiency has caused us to overlook something that's just as powerful for the longevity and strength of an organization, and that's resilience. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's that mean? What does resilience look like in the workplace? Well, you can't measure it easily on an Excel spreadsheet. It's very hard to quantify resilience. But what resilience looks like inside the walls of the Bazaar Incorporated is Lawrence Johnson showing up at 4:30 a.m. Monday morning to work, thrilled, appreciative, enthusiastic to be taking care of 500,000 square feet of warehouse space. You see, the daily nits and gnats and problems that we encounter on our jobs are nothing compared to the reality of never being allowed to play the game, never being allowed to enter the workforce at all. And when Lawrence faces those problems, he has the stark contrast, like so many other members of our team, of that reality. Now, there are ways that we can measure the power of resilience in a workplace. This past year, as our company entered a global pandemic and we were deemed an essential business because we ship everyday use items to retailers all over the world, our absenteeism was literally zero. At a time when there was so much volatility, so many reasons to not show up to work, ours was zero. Our turnover rate dropped 10x to nearly 6%. And we experienced one of the most profitable years in our company's 6-decade history. That's the power of resilience in the workplace. But it's not enough to just give a job. That's actually only the first step of this. You must set the stage for success for every single unique individual who walks in the door. Every single person. I want to tell you about a young man named Gabriel. Gabriel came to us when he was 16 years old, looking to work his very first job he's ever had. And I remember the day that him and his father, Ahmad, walked into my conference room. I remember it for a few reasons. One is that in our world of inclusive hiring, it's actually quite common for the families of the people who we hire to show up with them. We joke that we don't just hire the person, we hire their entire support network. Because guess what? Sometimes it does take a village. And that's okay. Whoever said it wasn't forgot what the village was for. So as we sat in our conference room and talked about what's it going to take for Gabe to succeed, Gabe barely uttered a word. Not one word during that time. You see, Gabe is on the autism spectrum. And what that means is that sometimes it's incredibly difficult for him to talk to people who he doesn't know. And so as we discussed and we worked with Gabe's father and my team to figure out what's it going to take for Gabe to be successful on the job, we realized two things. One was that Gabe was a visual learner. And two was that he was literally terrified at the prospect of having to talk to hundreds of strangers a day. So the obvious choice was to make Gabe a cashier at our store. And the second thing we did was we went off to our office and we opened up Photoshop and we made a visual processing map with Gabe's face on it. And we took him through each step of the customer service journey. And we sent Gabe off to the store. Full support of his manager, his father, and the business behind him, knowing that if he stumbles, we'll be there to pick him up. And this whole process probably only took about an hour longer than your traditional HR onboarding. There's actually a legal term for it. It's called a reasonable accommodation. The fact that we need a name for a team putting their new team member in the best position possible to succeed is crazy to me, but apparently we do. And Gabe was off. 8 weeks later, I walked into the store, I looked to my right, and here's this 6'1" kid standing proudly, exuding confidence, greeting every single person who walked into the door. And I had to do a double take. I honestly wasn't sure it was the same Gabe I had met a few months earlier. But it was. Because Gabe entered the workforce, faced his challenges with the full support of the people around him, and he realized a new part of himself through that process. Gabe's father, Ahmad, and I have stayed close. And when I talk to Ahmad now, he learned things about Gabe that he didn't even know during that time. He tells me that Gabe's social life is thriving now that he's graduating from high school, that he's actually become quite the chatterbox. That's the power of an open door, and that's the power of setting the stage for success for everybody who walks into a company. See, the old way of hiring is one where we think of people as a cog in a machine, and they are only as valuable to us as their output or their productivity. But the new way understands different. The new way of looking at jobs and the workplace knows that we must support every team member through their challenges and through their weaknesses, and we don't kick them out the door at the first sign of challenge or struggle on the job. The old way of looking at work is one where we only value you as much as you can add value to our bottom line. But the new way of work, the quantum shift in perspective that we understand, is that work is a mutual agreement. We appreciate as a company that you are going to commit your time, effort, energy, and your life to supporting the mission of the business. And in return, we're going to support you, your family, to better your standing, to overcome your challenges, to build skills on the job. It's a mutual agreement. When I think back to the blazing hot summer day that I met Lawrence Johnson and he was sweeping the streets of Chicago, I had been asking him question after question about how he liked working with Kara and how did he find himself there, and he finally paused. He stopped sweeping and he looked at me and he said, "Why are you asking me all this stuff?" And I said, "Lawrence, I just took over my family's company and I am looking for leaders." And Lawrence also stood up tall and he stuck out his incredibly strong hand and he looked me in the eye and he said, "I am a leader." And we shook hands on it. And in that moment, I chose to believe him and he chose to believe in me. And together, we kicked open a closed door. We interrupted years, cycles of disappointment, of no's, of closed doors. We changed the trajectory of Lawrence's life, his daughter's life, his family's, and the community that surrounds them. All it took was one yes, one chance. And so maybe we have to stop thinking about work as this place where the only thing that matters is productivity and profit and scale. Maybe we have to start thinking of work as a time when we can build our community, as we can contribute, enrich our lives with purpose, and hopefully support others to find theirs. See, this belief that what it takes to change the world is millions of followers online and billions of dollars of revenue is totally false. What it takes is appreciating that in every mundane little moment, we have an opportunity to shift somebody's life, to change their course. And so the chance to do this is with us every single day. It's actually here right now at this very minute. And it's always knocking and searching for you. And so when that opportunity does knock on your door, my only question is, will you choose to open it? Thank you.